It was a Thursday afternoon, warm, bright, and breezy enough to make the sun feel like a friendly suggestion instead of a demand. All Darnell Kennedy wanted was a quiet meal, nothing elaborate. A place to sit, a clean fork, and some peace. He wasn't dressed to impress. Faded jeans, an old Marlon Brando sweatshirt, and sneakers that had clearly been through more than a few seasons. His gray Subaru was tucked into a corner of the lot, away from the valet stand at the front of La Belleza Bistro. Darnell didn't do spectacle, never had. Despite owning multiple properties across Dallas and Tulsa, and a name that carried quiet weight in certain circles, he never saw the need to announce himself. The interior of the restaurant hadn't changed much since he first saw it: its sleek black tables, soft golden lighting, and wide windows facing the boulevard. It was calm inside, with only a handful of tables occupied. The kind of place where servers moved like dancers and conversation floated just above a whisper. Darnell paused at the host's stand, taking it all in. That's when Trevor noticed him. Trevor Langley, sharp-smiled and slightly slouched, leaned against the bar like it owed him something. He was chatting with a younger server, who laughed too easily at nothing in particular. Trevor's eyes flicked over Darnell's outfit, and his smirk deepened. "You lost, or just looking for somewhere casual to sit?" Trevor called out, tone soaked in condescension. "Just here for lunch," Darnell said, calm and even. Trevor pushed off the bar, grabbed a menu, and walked without another word, assuming Darnell would follow. "No spots at the bar," Trevor said, voice flat. "But I guess I can stick you in the back." Darnell said nothing, just followed. They walked past two booths before stopping at a small table for two near a painting of a quiet lake. Darnell pulled out his own chair and sat. Trevor dropped the menu on the table like it had personally offended him. "Water?" he asked, almost bored. "Sparkling, if you've got it." Trevor raised a brow. "Well, all right then, big spender," he said, not even trying to mask the sarcasm. Then he turned and walked off. At a nearby booth, a woman in a floral blazer glanced over and met Darnell's eyes. Her expression was brief, but knowing a small shake of her head, like she'd seen this routine before. Darnell gave a subtle nod back. This wasn't new to him. People often sized you up based on your clothes, your shoes, your car, or lack of valet usage, especially in a place like this. But he wasn't here for the service, he was here for the truth. What Trevor didn't know was that 2 weeks earlier, Darnell had quietly acquired a controlling stake in the restaurant. Private sale, off-market, the ink had barely dried. And no one had told the staff who their new owner was. Darnell wasn't the kind of owner who needed applause. He preferred to observe to see how people acted when they thought no one important was watching. Trevor returned with a glass barely filled with sparkling water, more foam than liquid. "You ready to order, or still working on the menu?" he asked with mock patience. "Grilled salmon," Darnell said, not glancing at the menu. "Broccolini, no sauce," Trevor scribbled on his notepad with a sigh. "If you say so." As he turned to leave, he muttered just loud enough to be heard, "Didn't know we were serving lunch at Foot Locker today." Darnell didn't flinch. He simply looked out the window, inhaling slowly. Trevor was background noise, but sometimes even background players needed to be shown the spotlight they thought they owned. Back in the kitchen, Trevor leaned against the counter near the espresso machine, wiping his hands on his apron. He spoke just loud enough for the line cooks and hostess to hear. "Got a guy out there ordering like he owns the place," he snorted. "Looks like he got lost on his way to a garage sale." Moments later, the restaurant manager stepped into the kitchen, her voice cutting clean through the noise. "Team meeting," she said. "Now, front of house." Everyone filed out, murmuring. At the front of the bistro, Darnell remained at his table, still calm, still quiet. The manager cleared her throat. "I'd like you all to meet Mr. Darnell Kennedy. As of 2 weeks ago, he's the new owner of La Belleza." Trevor froze, mouth half open. Darnell finally looked up and smiled, cool, polite, and unbothered. "Pleasure to meet you all," he said. "Let's talk about standards, shall we?" He had grinned like a kid at the bus stop, expecting a laugh. But the young cook, Luis, barely glanced up from the grill. He just arched an eyebrow and went back to flipping chicken. The hostess, Miranda, forced a polite smile and walked away. Trevor didn't catch the silence, or maybe he did and didn't care. "I mean, come on," he added with a scoff. "It's La Marina, not some mall food court." Out in the dining area, Darnell sat quietly, his phone resting on the table. He wasn't scrolling or texting, just observing. He watched who stopped by their tables and who didn't, who refilled drinks without being asked, how the host welcomed people who walked in off the street. When his food finally arrived, it wasn't Trevor who brought it. It was Miranda. "Grilled salmon, broccolini, no sauce," she said softly, placing the plate in front of him with care. "Thank you," Darnell replied, his tone calm but warm. "If you need anything, I'll be right over there," she added, meeting his eyes. He nodded. She turned and walked away. But Trevor couldn't help himself. He came back 2 minutes later, hovering at the edge of the table, with that same smug grin. "Everything good, boss?" "Fine," Darnell said without looking up. "You know, not everyone comes in here knowing what broccolini is," Trevor added, in that condescending tone that sounded friendly if you didn't listen too closely. "Good pick though, goes well with the house Chardonnay." "If you're into that kind of thing, I'm good with water," Darnell replied simply. Across the room, a couple sitting by the window shared a look. They'd been quietly watching since Darnell had walked in. "Is he always like that?" the man asked his wife. "Worse when the manager's not around," she whispered back. Trevor leaned in slightly again. "Hey, just a heads up, we've had some issues with counterfeit cash, so management's been asking folks to use cards if they can." Darnell finally looked up. "You saying that to everyone?" Trevor blinked. "I mean, just letting you know how it is." "No," Darnell replied calmly. "Explain it to me." Trevor laughed awkwardly, retreating. "Forget it, man. Just trying to help." As he walked away, Darnell caught Miranda watching from behind the bar. Her lips were pressed together tight. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. He took a slow bite of the salmon. It was excellent, the service that needed work. But this wasn't unfamiliar territory. Darnell had walked into places like this his entire life, places where your worth was judged by your shoes, your watch, or the tone of your voice when you said filet. That was why he invested in La Marina, not just because it made money, it did, or had a loyal customer base, it had that too, but because it could be something more. A place that welcomed everyone or kept pushing certain people out. Back in the kitchen, Miranda pulled Carlos, the manager, aside. "Just so you know, table 3, Trevor's been pretty rude." Carlos frowned. "How bad?" "Bad enough, I'm telling you," she said. "He made a crack about the guy's shoes and mentioned counterfeit bills." Carlos sighed through his nose. "Got it." He glanced out the small kitchen window just as Trevor walked by with 2 glasses of wine, acting like nothing had happened. Carlos made a mental note to check the schedule, but Darnell was already planning something bigger. Darnell wasn't a man who needed to raise his voice to be heard. He had spent the better part of 20 years in boardrooms, watching how real influence moved, quiet, patient, exact. He ate slowly, not because he was hungry, but because it gave him time. Time to notice the little things, how long it took for plates to be cleared, whether napkins were folded or crumpled, whether the bartender washed his hands after handling cash. These were not just details, they were signs. And La Marina, at that moment, had a fever. Trevor passed by again, not stopping this time. He just muttered, "Glad you are enjoying yourself," with that same sneer. Darnell did not flinch. He let the moment sit. Trevor did not like silence, he preferred reactions. And when a man does not give you one, it can shake your sense of control. On the far end of the room, Carlos came out from the back, clipboard in hand, sleeves rolled up. Late 30s, maybe, young for a general manager, but capable. The kind who knew regulars by name and did not mind cleaning a table himself when things got busy. He moved through the room like he always did, checking on guests until he reached Darnell's table. "Everything okay, sir?" he asked, polite and professional. Darnell looked up, gave a small but real smile. "The salmon is excellent. Tell the kitchen they did well." Carlos nodded. "Glad to hear it. Anything else I can get you?" There was a pause, just a little longer than usual. "No," Darnell said. "I will be settling up shortly." Carlos gave another nod and walked away. Miranda caught him a few steps later, whispering something quickly. Carlos stopped mid-stride, looked back toward Darnell's table, eyebrows raised slightly in concern, and then kept walking into the kitchen. At the bar, Trevor was making jokes again with the young waitress from earlier. "Dude ordered like he owns the place," he laughed, shaking his head. Acting all high and mighty in a hoodie. Miranda, picking up glasses nearby, gave him a hard look. You really do not know who that is, do you? Trevor chuckled. Him, please. Just some guy with spare change. She leaned closer, her voice low. You might want to stop talking. Before you find out the hard way. Trevor just smirked. Relax. You sound like human resources. Back at the table, Darnell placed a sleek black metal card on top of the bill. Miranda came to pick it up, careful and respectful. Thanks again for the meal, he said. And for treating me like a guest. Her eyes looked up, surprised but thankful. You are welcome, she said softly. Carlos came back into the room, checking something on his phone. Darnell stood and walked over to him calm and steady. Carlos, he said, holding out a hand. Carlos turned and shook it. Yes, sure. I would like to speak with you and your staff for a moment, Darnell said. If now is not a bad time. Carlos blinked. Sure. Let me gather them. He was confused but not alarmed. Darnell's tone didn't invite questions. Trevor watched the brief exchange from the bar. Something in the air had changed. Even he could feel it. Miranda passed by and muttered, You should lose the attitude. That's the new partner. Trevor laughed, but her face stayed serious. The joke didn't land. The kitchen still buzzed, pans sizzling, orders printing, but everything felt different. Like someone had lifted the floorboards and rattled what was underneath. Carlos clapped his hands twice. Everyone, meeting. Now. The staff gathered. Trevor leaned against the prep counter, arms crossed. Still smirking, but the edge was gone. Luis wiped his hands and nodded. Miranda stepped away from the bar and joined the others. Out in the dining room, Darnell stood near the host's stand, hands in his pockets. Calm, the room quieted. A few diners watched, but no one spoke. Carlos stepped forward. Everyone, just a quick moment. I want to introduce someone very important to this team. Darnell stepped up, looked around the room, and spoke low, steady. My name is Darnell Kennedy. As of 2 weeks ago, I became the majority owner of this restaurant. Silence. Trevor blinked, then looked at Miranda. Then at Carlos like he was just now solving a puzzle he didn't even know he was working on. Trying to catch up to what he'd just heard, Darnell took a step forward. I didn't come here to cause a scene, he said calmly. I came to observe, quietly, to see how things operate when no one thinks they're being watched. He paused and looked directly at Trevor. Unfortunately, I saw more than I wanted to. Trevor's mouth opened, maybe to explain, maybe to dodge, but Darnell lifted a hand, not angrily. Just enough to signal that he wasn't finished. I watched a man talk to a customer like they didn't belong. I heard jokes that weren't really jokes. I saw people getting sized up for things that have no place in this business. He shifted his gaze to the entire staff. And let me be clear, what I witnessed today, though it came from one person, isn't just a slip-up. It's a warning, a spark that can burn down everything good if we don't put it out early. Silence, not a word. Not a breath out of place. Darnell turned back to Trevor. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., you'll be here not to serve but to sit down with me and Carlos. You're going to explain exactly what made you think your behavior was acceptable. Trevor swallowed hard. Look, Mr. Kennedy, I didn't mean anything by it. That's the point, Darnell replied, his voice steady. You didn't have to. You were loud enough that another table complained. You were careless enough that your own teammates had to step in. You embarrassed this restaurant. Carlos stepped up now, his voice cool and even. We don't tolerate anyone being treated like they don't belong, especially not an owner. Trevor's usual smirk was gone. He looked pale now. Like the floor had shifted underneath him. Miranda stood with her arms folded, looking away. Darnell's eyes swept over the room one last time. This place has potential, he said. But potential only matters if the people inside protect the values it's built on. I don't care about fake smiles or corporate lingo. I care about respect, for the food, for the customers, for each other. Then he turned to Carlos. I'll see you in the morning. Without another word, Darnell walked out, but what he left behind stayed. It lingered. Echoed louder than any speech. Trevor barely slept. His brain wouldn't stop replaying everything, his comments, the smug little jokes, the way he tossed that menu like it was nothing. He kept thinking about the business card Darnell had handed over. About the look in Miranda's eyes when she said, "That's the new partner." And now it was 7:58 a.m. He sat in a back office he'd never even noticed before. His leg bounced. His palms sweated. He was waiting for a conversation he knew he couldn't charm his way out of. Carlos entered first, holding a notepad and a copy of the employee manual. He didn't sit, just laid both on the table and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Morning," he said flatly. "Yeah," Trevor muttered. The door opened again. Darnell walked in with the same casual energy, the same calm stride, but Trevor saw him differently now. This wasn't the guy in the hoodie. This was the man with the keys. "Let's keep it simple," Darnell said, taking a seat across from him. "You know why we're here," Trevor nodded. "Yeah." "Good. Then don't waste my time. Explain it." Trevor hesitated. I didn't mean to upset anybody. I thought I was just messing around. I thought you were cool, like the kind of guy who wouldn't take it the wrong way." Darnell lifted an eyebrow. "The kind of guy," Trevor stammered. "I mean, I wasn't serious. I talk like that with other guests sometimes. It's just my way of joking, nothing personal." "That's your excuse, that you treat everyone poorly, so no one should be offended. Do you even understand what this job is?" "I mean, I serve people. I make sure the guests are happy. All guests, not just the ones in suits. Not just the ones who tip big, all of them. Your job is to make people feel like they belong here. That's it. Doesn't matter what shoes they wear or what their accent sounds like." Trevor dropped his gaze. "I messed up." "You didn't mess up. You showed us something." The words hung in the air for a moment. "Look, I know how I came off. Yeah, I crossed the line. But I don't hate anyone. I was just being dumb. I get it now. Words matter. Tone matters. How you made people feel, that matters." Trevor looked up, more vulnerable than anyone had ever seen him on the floor. "So, what now?" There was a tap of a finger against the desk, followed by a pause. "I'm not firing you." "Not yet." Trevor blinked. "You're not?" "I'm giving you one chance. Just one. You're doing a full retraining day. You'll listen to everyone on staff, especially the ones you've ignored. You'll learn why what you said wasn't just wrong, but harmful. This weekend, you shadow Miranda and Louise, quietly, respectfully. If I hear one more sideways joke, one more careless comment, you're out." Trevor nodded. "Okay, I understand. Good. Because I don't do second warnings." As he reached the door, he paused and looked over his shoulder. "You were right about one thing yesterday. I do own this place." And then he left. A long look followed. "You better mean what you said, because people are watching now." But not everyone was watching to see him fail. Some were watching to see if he could actually change. By the next day's lunch rush, the word had spread. Not through gossip, but through how people moved, how they looked when Trevor passed by. No one said much. They didn't have to. When Trevor approached Miranda before the shift, ready to shadow her, she gave a simple nod. "Stay close. Keep quiet. Pay attention." It wasn't cold. It was real. Trevor followed. Held trays when asked. Cleared tables when pointed to. No jokes. No sarcasm. No ego. For the first time since he'd started, he acted like someone who knew the place didn't orbit around him. By 2 p.m. the restaurant was humming again. Plates came out smooth, conversation flowed, and Darnell sat in a corner booth with a laptop open, pretending to work. But really, he was watching. He watched Trevor refill water without being asked. Watched him take quiet correction from Louise. Watched him carry himself a little differently. Not scared, just uncomfortable in a way that meant reflection. Outside, during a break, Trevor leaned against the wall. Not smoking, not scrolling, just standing there, thinking. Miranda came out and sipped her drink beside him. "Tough day?" she asked. He exhaled. "Feels like everyone's staring through me." "They probably are." Trevor nodded. "I was a jerk." "Yep." He looked at her, hoping for something softer, but Miranda wasn't here to soothe him. "I didn't realize people hated working around me," he said. "I thought I was just joking. I didn't mean to." She cut him off gently. "You made people feel small. Doesn't matter what you meant. What matters is you didn't notice, or worse, you didn't care until someone with power called it out." Trevor looked down. "I don't know if I can fix it." "You can try," she said. "But don't expect applause." Inside, Darnell closed his laptop. He didn't need to see more. The thing he came to witness had already happened. He walked through the kitchen. Carlos met him near the pass. "Better today," Carlos said. "I saw," Darnell replied. "He's got a long way to go." "They always do," Carlos said. The goal isn't perfection. It's whether he keeps showing up different. You think he will? We'll find out. On his way out, Darnell passed the same couple from 2 days ago, now seated again. The man looked up, surprised. Hey, aren't you? Darnell smiled and held up a hand. Just a customer today. The woman smiled. Place feels different. Darnell nodded. It shouldn't take someone like me walking in for that to happen. But sometimes, it does. They exchanged a quiet nod. Not about power or ownership, just shared understanding. Outside, Trevor walked back in. No announcement. No dramatic return, just a breath, and a second chance. The next week, things settled, but not back to how they were. Something had shifted. The staff moved with more care. Not out of fear, but awareness. They had seen what happened when someone treated people like props in a story they thought they controlled. Trevor came in early, not to impress anyone. Not with gifts or charm, just to learn. He asked Louise how to properly reset a wine glass. Asked Miranda how she stayed respectful under pressure. And when a young black couple came in Saturday night dressed casually, Trevor offered menus with a steady voice, maybe gentler, maybe more sincere. He wasn't perfect, still slipped up, still had to catch himself before the wrong thing came out. But he was trying. As for Darnell, he didn't come in often. Just once, that Friday. Sat in the back with an old friend. The friend looked around. You own this place, part of it, Darnell said. Figured you'd have your name on the wall or something. That's not the point. Then what is? Darnell looked out, at Miranda clearing plates with care, at Trevor refilling glasses, at Carlos guiding a new hire. Some people only respect what they see. I'd rather build something real. The friend nodded. Bet they didn't expect you. That's the idea. They clinked glasses. Not to money, not to ego, but to the kind of change that sticks, quiet, steady. Because respect shouldn't rely on appearances. Dignity doesn't need a name tag or a title. It just waits until it's needed. And when the moment comes, it stands. Not to shame, but to remind us what was always there. So next time you find yourself judging someone based on their clothes, their tone, their silence, think again. You never know who's holding the key to your next opportunity. And that door, it opens both ways.